back, and they basically want you to believe that this election is a referendum on the economy, a referendum on me. They don't want you to understand this is a choice, but make no mistake, this election is a choice, and the stakes could not be greater. Because if they win this election, the chair of a Republican campaign committee has promised that they will pursue the exact same agenda as they did before they took office. Now, so just understand, this is not like the Republicans went off and they said, boy, we really screwed up. We've got to rethink everything. And they went off into the desert and they meditated, and then they finally came back with some new ideas. That's not what happened. The very same agenda, and we know what that agenda is. You cut taxes for millionaires and billionaires. You cut rules for special interests, whether it's insurance companies that want to drop your coverage when you get sick, or credit card companies that want to jack up your rates, or Wall Street banks that are dealing in all kinds of derivatives that end up crashing the market. You cut the middle class loose to fend for themselves. They'll tell you it's the ownership society, but basically it's saying you're on your own. If you lose your job, you're on your own. If your child doesn't have health care, tough luck, you're on your own. You're a young person, you can't afford to go to college. Too bad. Lift yourself up by your own bootstraps, you're on your own. It's an agenda that turned a record surplus into a record deficit. An agenda that produced slower job growth than we've had this past year. An agenda that let Wall Street run wild at the expense of folks right here on Main Street. An agenda that nearly destroyed the economy. Do they think that we have forgotten? I mean, it's not like we didn't try what they're peddling. We tried it for 8 years. It didn't work. And if they take over Congress, the other side has already promised to roll back health reform so that insurance companies can go back to denying you coverage when you get sick. They want to roll back Wall Street reform so that taxpayers can be on the hook for the next bailout. They want to let credit card companies hit you with hidden fees or penalties. They want to cut education by 20% to help pay for a $700 billion tax break for the wealthiest 2% of Americans, folks who don't need it and wouldn't. Look, this is the same theory they have been peddling for years. And Ohio, it is up to you to tell them we do not want what they are selling. We've been there before and we are not going back. Let me, I've been explaining to people around the country. It's as if they drove America's car into the ditch. They drove it into the ditch, and it was a big ditch. And so I came along, and Ted Strickland came along, and we put on our boots, and we went down into the ditch. And it was hot down there, and it was muddy. There were bugs. But we said that's okay. Even though we didn't drive it into the ditch, it's still our responsibility to get that car out of the ditch. And so we pushed, and we pushed, and every once in a while we'd look up, and up on the road you'd see the Republicans standing there, fanning themselves, sipping on a Slurpee, having a latte. And we'd say, hey, why don't you come down and help push a little bit? We need some help down here. And they'd say, no, that's all right. They said, but you need to push harder. You're not pushing the right way. And we just kept on pushing. We kept on pushing. Finally, we get this car up on level ground. It's pointing in the right direction. We're ready to move America forward. But the next thing we know, we get this tap on our shoulder, and we look back, and who is it? It's the Republicans. And they say, we want the keys back. You can't have the keys back. You don't know how to drive. Now, if you want, you can roll with us. But you got to be in the back seat. I don't know if you've noticed, if you want to take your car forward, you got to put it in what? In D. If you want to go backwards, it goes what? We don't want to go backwards. We're moving America forward. Because I love you back. Now, let's examine what's happened over the last 20-something months. Because of the steps we've taken, we no longer face the possibility of a second depression. The economy's growing again. The private sector's created jobs 9 months in a row. But you know what? We still have such a long way to go. We've got so much more work to do. I know there are people out there who are just hanging by a thread, people who are hurting. It's what keeps me up at night. It's what keeps me fighting. But I also know this. The biggest mistake we could make right now, Ohio, is to go back to the very same policies that caused all this hurt in the first place. I mean, think about it for a second. It just doesn't make sense. The other side is counting on all of you having amnesia, just forgetting what happened here. We can't return to a philosophy that nearly destroyed our economy and decimated the middle class right here in Ohio. And I say this not to relitigate the past. I say it because we can't relive the past. And that's what this election's about. Not just where we've been, but where we want to go. Not where we are right now, but where we want to be 10 years from now and 20 years from now. What does America's future look like? What's the work we've got left to do? This election is not just about moving forward versus moving backwards. It's also a contest between our deepest hopes and our deepest fears. And the other side is playing on fear. That's what they do. That's what they do. You see, we Democrats have a different idea about what the future should look like, and it's an idea rooted in our belief about how this country was built. It's based on not just ideas and books. It's based on the lived history of Ted Strickland and Michelle and myself. We didn't come from wealthy families. We didn't come from famous families. We came from working families. We came from some ordinary folks. We had to go to school on scholarships and grants. You know, if we wanted some spending money, we had to work for it. And so we remember the story of our families' lives, and it's the story of your lives. And we know that government doesn't have all the answers to our problems. We believe government should be lean and efficient. But in the words of the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who, by the way, I'm not sure could win a nomination in the Republican Party right now. We also believe that government should be there to help people do what they cannot do better for themselves. That means we believe in a country that rewards hard work and responsibility, but also a country where we give each other a hand up, where we look after one another, where we say, I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. That's the America I know. That's the choice in this election. We see a future where the next century is driven by American innovation. American ingenuity. We don't want to give tax breaks to companies that ship jobs overseas. We want to give tax breaks to companies right here in the United States of America, to small businesses and American manufacturers and clean energy companies, because we want the solar panels and wind turbines and electric cars made right here in the U.S. of A. by American workers. That's the choice in this election. We see an America where every citizen has the skills, the training to compete with any worker in the world. The other side might think it's a good idea to cut education by 20%. But let me tell you who doesn't think that. China doesn't think it's a good idea. South Korea, India, they don't think it's a good idea. They're not cutting back on education because they're not playing for second place. And the United States of America doesn't play for second place. We play for first. That's why tens of billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies that used to go to big banks, you know where they're going now? Where they should, to students and families to help pay for their student loans, to help pay for their education. That's why we're making a college tax credit permanent, worth $10,000 in tuition relief for every student who's going to college. We see in America where the middle class is growing, where opportunity is shared, where it's not just some people who make it, but everybody's got a chance to make it, where the only limit to your success is how hard you're willing to try. That's why we want to give tax cuts and make them permanent for middle-class families. That's why we'll fight efforts to privatize Social Security. That's not going to happen on my watch. We're not going to take the retirement savings of a generation of Americans and hand it over to Wall Street. That's why we refuse to go back to the days when insurance companies or the banks or the oil companies had free rein to do whatever they wanted, running roughshod over the interests of middle-class families. I want to make sure that insurance companies, if you're paying your premium, then they're paying for your health care when you get sick. I want to make sure that credit card companies aren't hitting you with hidden fees and penalties. I don't want taxpayers to be on the hook for Wall Street's mistakes. I do that as somebody who profoundly believes in the free market, but the free market works when there are rules of the road in place. And when the best businesses, the ones that are competing for your business on the basis of high quality and a good price and good customer service, when they're the ones who succeed because there are decent rules out there, looking out for consumers, looking out for you, that's the choice in this election. That's what we're fighting for. That's what we're fighting for. Now, I want to warn you about something. And by the way, I hope you don't mind I'm losing my voice because I'm still fired up. But I got some campaigning to do over the next couple of weeks here. Right now, the same special interests that would profit from the other side's agenda, they're fighting back. The empire's striking back. To win this election, they are plowing tens of millions of dollars into front groups. They're running misleading negative ads all across the country. They don't have the courage, they don't have the gumption to stand up and disclose their identity. It could be insurance companies, banks. We don't know. This isn't just a threat to Democrats, this is a threat to our democracy. And the only way to fight it, the only way to match their millions of dollars is all of you. Millions of voices who are ready to finish what we started in 2008. That's where you come in. That's where you come in. That's why you need to vote in this election. Thanks to early voting here in Ohio, you can vote right now. Look, a lot of you got involved in 2008 because you believed we were in a defining moment in our history. You believed this was a time where the decisions we make, they're going to shape the lives of our children, our grandchildren, for decades to come. That's why you knocked on those doors. That's why you made those phone calls. That's why you stood in line, some of you, to cast your vote. Some of